Choose your characters. Dweavis. Whether you like it or not, Dweavis is here to fight. Player 1 ready. Madcap.
Prepare yourself to be crushed to dust.
Player 2 ready. Match set. Fight.
I actually don't know the controls. I probably should have looked first. The game basically froze up there for a little while. I don't know what happened. Why the hell is there a swing set inside the building? Okay, alright. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that was Officer's swing set. I didn't mean to make fun of it. I forgot to record fraps. Damn it!
Booted, loaded, and ready to play. This is
Bits.
Hello, and welcome to Bits. This is the fantastic podcast for gamers, by gamers, where most of the time we'll go over, the latest news, what we're interested in, what we're playing, what's happening, just the general vibe of the world, and see what's happening in the game world. I'm your player 2 Madcap, and joining me is my co-op buddy Dweavis.
Hi there, everybody.
So, like I said, most of the time we'll do that. In this current episode of Bits, there's not really much news at all going on. What? Generally speaking, I suppose we're past the, what used to be the Christmas rush. Get your game out for all the grandmothers and mothers and fathers to buy their children.
Was there a Christmas rush this past year?
No.
I can't tell.
I can't tell. Usually, in the past it's like, ooh, what's that big game you're going to buy for Christmas?
Well,
what's the new thing?
I guess you need actual physical copies of games in stores for there to be a physical rush.
That's true.
Otherwise, it's a digital rush.
It's a digital rush to get your Fortnite llamas and stuff. That's the rush now.
Ooh.
I don't know. I don't even know what you do. It's like with every game being a games as a service, lasting forever until you die. I guess what's there to be excited about anymore, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So we might as well just hit the only bullet point I've got. And this is one we've talked about ad nauseum. For some reason, I thought this was final, but I guess not. I don't even know if I can view the Twitter/X page. Oh, I can. Look at that. I can at least view this one post without having to log in. So there you go.
Okay.
I swear that we had already said this, but for what should be the final time, unless we're talking like Hostess here and somebody buys up the donuts and stuff, E3 is gone. This coming from their official Twitter/X post, officialized, finally. It says, after more than 2 decades of E3, each one bigger than the last, the time has come to say goodbye. Thanks for the memories, GGWP. So, I thought this had already happened, but I don't know if it was maybe not official. I don't know. Thank God, E3 is dead.
Wow. E3 is dead. Long live E3.
Yeah, right. I got to go once. We both went a couple. Well, you went a couple times, a few times, and it's what it is. It was good to see once, and I don't know.
Yeah,
more of a hype for people outside of the world, I guess.
Yeah, I feel bad to anybody that's only ever been able to attend in the past 10 years. Because that's when it really kind of was going downhill. If you were in the late 90s and throughout the 2000s, 2000 2010, you got to see it in its best version possible, basically.
Right. Yeah, because the E3 that has been is not what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I love cosplay and stuff. I'm all about that, but once it became that, like letting all the dredges of society in to turn it into like a Comic-Con or something, I don't know. It just, I don't know, never felt the same. So it's gone, finally. It got tiring. Oh, we're going to try and do it. No, we're not. It's online. Well, maybe it's not. We'll try to bring it back physically. Nah, we won't. Just let it go.
Yeah.
It's gone. And that, like we said, that was the opening of the can. Once companies were like, what do you mean we could just post our own video? around that time of year. We don't have to pay $1 million to go to E3 because E3 was the thing that you had to do. That was the thing. You released your game news at that time. There was no Nintendo Direct back then. There was none of that stuff. That's where you got the guy holding up, oh, here's the PlayStation 3. Oh, God, can I put it down yet? Or you had Nintendo, here's our new console. Where is it? Whoosh, Game Boy Micro. You know, that kind of stuff. That's what you did, but I don't know. So, yeah, that's the only news story I've got. I guess that's official. We'll never have to talk about it ever again. I'm sure somebody will revive it.
Yeah, I mean, we already know Jeff Keighley's doing his summertime thing, and there's going to be versions of things of like to take its place, but it's never going to be the same.
No.
Yeah. So.
Nope.
Goodbye, E3. So, will it try to come back from the grave again?
Probably.
You know, but who knows? Who knows? It's funny that they never found a sufficient way to do it digitally.
Yeah, that's a little disappointing.
For an event that is like part of the tech industry, that they weren't able to get ahead of the game.
We even gave them a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they didn't take any of those and run with it. It's their loss, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the people, whoever it was that ran E3, they got a bit too big for their own britches. You know, like they felt like they could do anything and they could run things however they wanted, and everybody had to, you know, kowtow to them and be like, hey, this is how it is. You got to do it. And then Nintendo came out and was like, this is not how we have to do it.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do it. And all the other people were like, oh my God, look at Nintendo. Let's do that. And then E3 was like, wait. No. Don't do that. Come back. It was like, no, too late.
Too late. Yeah. It's always funny, the harsh reality of actually being at E3. Like the promised land where you go and you're like, wow, all these new games and stuff. And then you realize you only have time to maybe do one because the lines are so long and everything. And it's like, oh, it's not a wonderland of, I'm going to go play this and then that and then this and this and that.
If there was a way to extract out my live blog of my last visit to E3 that we did on the Bits and Flicks site,
right?
Because I documented my entire day on there, and the funny thing is, I didn't know it at the time, but that was the last E3. Like, I actually had a running like breakdown of how the last E3 that will ever happen, how it operated, and there was a lot of problems. I think most of it was me just being sarcastic about how terrible everything was. So, I think the thing that like I was like, okay, this is the death knell of E3 is when I came across one of those silent what do they call them? Silent nightclubs. Where they had
they
all had the headphones on, but they were doing it with VR. So they also had VR, and there's just all these people with VR headsets and headphones bobbing up and down and stuff on a dance floor with no sound coming from it. I was like, that's what you come to E3 for.
This is true. Yeah, well...
But they also had really amazing things that you'll never see anywhere else, because... I can't say that. Maybe you see it at like PAX or something like that. But like I remember they had a VR setup for a Serious Sam in VR. And the booth literally had like a gigantic Gatling gun that you could hold while in VR. And I was like, that's amazing. But at the same time, I started racking my brain. I'm like, wait a minute. If you have the headset on, what does it matter if you're holding a real life replica of a Gatling gun? Because you can't see it.
Right. Yeah.
You're in VR.
It could just be a little stick that you hold on to. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun for everybody outside of VR.
Right.
But, like, yeah, I don't know.
I think that's the problem with VR is the disconnect between you and your friends. Like, hey, you want to come over and play VR? Sure. Okay, I'll just sit here while you play it.
So some of the VR, I think they've certainly have trying to address the issue of like you having a brick on your face, where you're actually able to see outside the headset and see the things around you now. It's almost like they basically utilize all the VR cameras to give you an image of stuff outside. So yeah, and VR, some people love it.
I think it's a solo thing.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing multiplayer with people and they're on their own headset somewhere.
I'll never completely ever knock VR because I feel like it has a place in somewhere. But like for me personally as a gamer, I've never been able to get comfortable in VR. So
I think for me, the only VR thing is simulation stuff. Specifically flying for me, but like driving, things like that, where it actually puts you into the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. One day we'll get to Ready Player One. One day.
Hopefully not the Spielberg version.
No, definitely that one. I want the I want the track thing that he's on, that he runs on in all directions.
Right.
Because if there's one thing that that people that play video games love, it's being secretly tricked into exercising.
Yeah, gamers love exercise. That's not completely why there was an entire South Park episode on the highly active nature of gamers.
That was like out of all the things that Ready Player One got wrong, I was like that was the most laughable. They expect people to run while they're playing a game.
No. I can't wait for Ready Player 2 to come out to see your reaction. Because even the book was awful. So if the book was great and the movie was awful, if the book was awful, the movie has to be terrible.
You never know. Sometimes an awful book can translate into a great movie.
That's true. Maybe they'll make a bunch of stuff up. I don't think there's any hope for Ready Player 2, though, based on the book.
Okay.
But yeah. God, Ready Player 1. Look at you bringing up memories.
That's right. Hey, so there was another news story I wanted to bring up. Something that it actually correlates a lot with stuff we've talked about in the past. But it's funny to hear some people in the game industry actually saying this stuff out loud now. Like they've gotten so brazen now that they're like, this is the thing that's going to happen. You better deal with it. So this past week, there was an interview or something like that with one of the head person at Ubisoft.
Oh no, I know what story this is.
Yeah, and the quote that came out of the interview was that I'm trying to find the exact quote here because they quote a lot of stuff that this dude said, but it was something. Okay, so this may end up being more of a paraphrase than a quote. That gamers need to start getting comfortable with not owning games.
Yep.
And so, like the actual, I don't want to get into Ubisoft bashing. We do that a lot already. Game industry moving towards digital. We've already covered all that, right? The stuff that caught my eye, and I wish I could find the actual article that I saw originally because the comment section was gold. Because it gave such a good insight into where people's brains are with this idea of no longer owning games. It's like You've never actually seen that conversation happen because nobody's ever outright said it the way this guy did. And it was a mixture of shock, surprise, and sadness because there were a number of people in there that basically said they're okay with not owning games, that they're okay with things like services and things of that nature. And they're like, it's like, I rarely play a game that I want to own. And my mind automatically was like, well, that's because you're talking about modern games.
Right. Yes.
Like there's a lot of modern games that don't really entice you to go through them more than once, especially those games that are inexperienced.
Right.
Where it's like not actually a game. It's like, yeah, why would you ever want to go through an experience again?
Right.
So there was a number of people that were talking about that in that regard. And then there were some people that said like there's certain games that I would like to own but they seem to have this fantasy world that the game industry is going to allow them to be able to have these gaming services and also choose to own a game. But also owning a game seems to be subjective. It's like, is owning a game purchasing a digital version of it? And they see a lot of people seem to think that owning a game is that constitutes you owning the game, and that's not necessarily true. Like, because like all you got to do is compare it to the physical copy, where nobody from Ubisoft is going to come break into your house, I hope, and steal and take that game from you and say like, okay, your license is up on this. We're taking this back now.
Right. I still have my copy of GoldenEye on the 64, no matter what their licensing says.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, but they can do that with a digital copy of a game. They can choose at any time to revoke your access to that thing, even if you have it downloaded on your system, because every system requires an internet connection anymore. So,
right. I mean, look at like something like Plants vs. Zombies. Oh, we can't have Michael Jackson character in there. We're going to alter it.
Yeah, exactly. And then I look at other examples, like I think I've mentioned in the past, of other games that have been removed from, just delisted because the studios lost the licensing rights to like a music track or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, so there's a lot of people that are filling their heads with this fantasy that they are getting to own games, and there was a very small number of people in there that were complaining about what this guy was saying like, it's like, no, if they ever take my ability to actually own a game, like an actual copy of a game, then I'm going to be upset. It's like, they've already done that.
Yeah, hello Steam.
Yeah. Well, I would say Steam is the harbinger of where we're at right now, and the entire PC community is like a 10-year look into the future of the console world, basically at this point. Yep. And I was actually having this conversation with my fiance about whether or not we own our PlayStation 4 games that we have, and I told her, it's like, yeah, we pretty much do, but still the entire game is not on the disc.
Right.
Like,
or you're forced to update it.
You're forced to update it, but every game I put on my PlayStation, it has to install.
Yep.
Like, there's still an installation process, and this is actually going to play a little bit into the big thing I have to talk about later, which is the Polymega system I got. But like, there are certain games that I own from limited run games where they advertise the fact that the entire game is on the disc. Like, I put the disc in the game and it doesn't install anything. I can just play it. Like, that's like in the 0.1% category of games on the PlayStation 4.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I go back and I'm like, okay, what is a game? What systems were the ones where you wholly owned a game and didn't have to worry about it being updated?
It's that little thing with the internet connection.
Yeah, like maybe back during PlayStation 2, Xbox, the first Xbox, and GameCube.
I think so. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think those were probably the last ones. And the first Xbox is kind of got an asterisk to it because it did eventually have games come out with DLCs and updates and patches.
Right.
But GameCube and PlayStation 2, I don't think ever did that.
And the GameCube never had an internet connection.
Yeah. So because at first I was like, maybe my Xbox 360. It's like, no, patches, all that stuff. Yeah, no, that's not necessarily true.
I'm still trying to remember playing, what was it, Grand Theft Auto 5 at the time, and it's like, you need a bigger hard drive. I'm like, why? Here, I have the disc right here.
Exactly. So yeah, so like the fact that a Ubisoft CEO came out talking about their Ubisoft Plus platform, and talking about people better get used to not owning games, like, I think people should heed that warning. Like, this is not like they're testing the waters. They've been testing the waters for decades. Like, this is them straight up saying, like, this is how it is now. Like, we've often talked about how this is the last console generation for Xbox and PlayStation. Like, Xbox, I'm 100% convinced that they're never going to do another console because they're just going to shift over. If anything, you're going to get like a Steam Deck, but for Game Pass.
Right. Yeah.
That's your next Xbox console right there.
It'll just be a streaming box.
Yep. Yeah. PlayStation, it's a bit up in the air. Maybe they might try to do another console. I don't think so. I don't think they will. And then it's just because they're moving to games as a service, and they're all going to be digital only, and people aren't going to be able to own their games. So, yeah.
I guess, I mean, to clarify, you probably are saying that there will be a PS6, but it won't be like with physical media. It'll just be a little streaming box.
Yeah.
Because Sony has to have. They make their money off the consoles. They don't have games, so.
Yeah, and to be fair, like Xbox already has its streaming box variant. Right now, yeah. Sony doesn't offer that, but
I think
Xbox does
shortly, though.
Oh, probably they're gonna offer their discless version of it soon.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So heed this warning, not just from us. Now you're hearing it from Ubisoft, and you're gonna start hearing it from other publishers as well. That you should get used to not owning your games anymore, and there are ways around that, and I will talk about that later. But for now, I'll return the floor back to you. But yeah, I saw that story, and I was like, it's like proving everything we've been warning about for years now in that one statement.
Which, like you said, I don't think the majority of people care about because the majority of people just sit down and play Fortnite for the 10,000th time. And it's like season 973. Now you have like Gwyneth Paltrow skins. Great.
Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah. And exactly. And I think the deeper conversation is like it goes beyond video games, which is just like people being okay with owning anything. But we're not going to dive into that in this. So.
Yeah, I think pretty soon people aren't going to have memories anymore. Like where you can sit down and go, like, boy, do you remember that time when Half-Life came out or Ocarina of Time? Oh yeah, man, I remember playing that. Now it's like, what do you remember? 5 years from now, you're going to go, I remember getting that hot dog skin in Fortnite. Or will you? Because the next week you got something else that was the cool thing at the time.
Yeah, and like we talk about like console launches, right? There is always like a specific game that you can tie to a console launch, and like
not anymore.
I can't do that for. I could probably the last one I could go back to is probably Xbox 360, Wii, that era maybe.
Well, don't forget the Switch. That launched with Breath of the Wild.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nintendo will still carry that torch, but for the other consoles and everything else.
Well, I still don't know. First of all, it's still a confusing mess with Xbox. Like, which one's the most recent? X, Series X, S, Y, Q.
Talk about a failure in branding.
Yeah. But even to this day, now that I think the PS5 Pro is on the way, I still don't know why you'd buy those consoles. Like you said, what launch titles were there? What exclusives are there?
Yeah.
There used to be things like, as much as you might hate it, like Ratchet and Clank, Ace Combat was an exclusive, I remember. Halo, stuff like that. Now it's like I look at the PlayStation, I'm like, what are people playing? Call of Duty. Great. Well, you can buy that anywhere. You can put that on your iWatch if you wanted to. Fortnite, Roblox, Apex Legends. What are all the generic things people play now? Those are everywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the point of those consoles is.
Other than they're all going to become Steam Decks.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, all anybody has to do is look to Steam and realize where the future's going.
Yeah, because at that point, like other than them having exclusive rights to certain games for their services, like why wouldn't you just have a Steam Deck at that point?
Right. I mean, Microsoft has already said they want their games live service everywhere.
Yeah.
They would gladly go, hey, Sony.
I think Microsoft probably has the best shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply because of all the different IPs that they've been latching or they've been picking up, and just other deals with other publishers and stuff like that they're doing. Like I think they're setting themselves up to be probably the best competition for Steam.
Well, plus they have Windows. Let's not forget that.
Yep.
So they're already putting their stuff multiple places, and Windows is not just Windows. It's HP, it's Dell, it's IBM, you know.
Yeah.
Sony's like, all we have is us and our PlayStation.
So what you're going to look for as far as top selling points is going to be library and performance.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, how well do the things play on there, and what do you have to play on there?
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah, and that's why I guess you saw all these companies try to do the movie streaming service thing, and get their piece of the pie. It's like EA's, nope, I'm not putting my stuff on Steam. We want 100% of everything on Origin. Ubisoft did the same thing. Bethesda tried to do that a little bit, and it's like, okay, so I'm gonna go buy into an entire account on Origin just so I can play your EA games. Like, no thanks. Ubisoft of all people? I'm gonna have a whole service just for your crappy games? Are you kidding me? Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, it's a new year. I mean, people are still holding out hope for the next Nintendo console. I don't know when people will start talking about the next Xbox and PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2025? Because I know the PS5 Pro's on the way. So, and the Slim, I think, is also coming out. The Xbox Toaster is on the way, I believe.
And like, let me guess, the reduced price one's only going to be $400.
Yeah, right. Is it going to be available is the bigger question.
It's going to be $400, and you got to buy the controller separately.
Yeah. Oh, man, I don't know. It's funny because I've never really liked the Xbox because it's like the bro console, and pretty much most of the stuff on the Xbox was on the PC anyways because it's Microsoft. So I was like, I don't really need that. But back in the day, Sony used to be like the holy grail console, even though I've never liked Sony, because that's where you got all your Japanese stuff, all your RPGs, all that really good stuff. And I don't know, Sony's taken a turn for the worse because they're like the hardcore censoring company now, and all the JRPG stuff has gone to Nintendo, where Nintendo, ironically enough, doesn't censor anything. So it's really an interesting shift. So now that Nintendo's got all that stuff in their court, Sony has just become completely irrelevant. And especially when I look at all the comparisons of things coming out, it's like, here's the Switch version, here's the Sony version. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's wearing parkas and stuff, and
yep.
It's like, wow. It's kind of the same way you avoid Amazon games because they just destroy everything. Anything branded with their logo, I will never buy. Ever.
Wow.
Ever. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know. What they're going to raise up at the next non-existent E3 and go, we announced the PS6. Here it is. And it'll just be like nothing in their hands. Well, where is it? Let's imagine for a moment. The new PS6.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how far gamers are willing to go along with this. My fear is that gamers will just let the game industry run right over them.
I don't even think that's a fear. I think that's just a given because people on their cell phones just get walked over all the time.
Like I said, though, like there was some slight optimism I got from some of the comments I read, like how far these people will go to back up what they're claiming. You know, like they better never take my ability to buy a game away from me ever. It's like I'm not entirely convinced that you're willing to take the steps you need to back that claim up. You know,
right.
Like for me, for instance, it was really difficult to skip an entire console generation because I'd never done that before. Like since I was a kid, I've owned at least one console from each new generation.
Right. Yeah.
And when like the PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox came out, it was a combination of my realization that one, there wasn't anything on them I wanted, but also like what they're transforming the game industry into was not something I was looking for. It's not something I wanted. So I was like, okay, well, they always say, you know, speak with your checkbook, right? With your wallet, speak with your wallet. And I did. I refused to buy them. You know, clearly we were in the minority because those things were constantly being sold out like for years on end. But I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. It really comes down to alternatives and what good alternatives there may be. Because, you know, if you're telling a gamer, you stop playing games to make a point, it's like, screw you. I'm going to keep playing my games. it's like they're all our alternatives. And once again, to tease that a little bit, I'll get into that a little bit later.
Oh, so. Just talk about it.
No, I want to hear about stuff you've been playing. I've been talking a lot.
I've been talking a lot. Yeah, I've got a large list here, but I guess the biggest thing to just chuck out of the way and bury under society.
Chuck it.
Starfield.
Oh yeah, that thing.
It's done.
That could mean so many different things.
Well, I think for the first time in my life that I can... Well, okay, no, sorry. Oblivion. Never mind. But anyways, in the most recent runs of their games, I completed Starfield. I've never completed Skyrim. I've never completed Fallout 4 because there's just so much to do. You just get lost. And then, hundreds of hours in, you go, I guess I'm kind of done. I'm kind of bored finally after 5 years of playing this. Starfield... I'm trying to think if this is a spoiler tag, if I need to do that. I think I should. If you don't want to know anything about Starfield, this isn't like I'm going to be talking about the huge story and revealing everything.
You were never in space. It was all simulation.
Yeah. I would accept that because the space stuff in that game was not great.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess spoiler warnings for the ending of the game, but not because it's like I'm going to reveal everything, just because I guess it would ruin the surprise, maybe, of it. So whatever. Tune out for the next few minutes if you don't want to know anything about Starfield. Okay, maybe I'll wave my hands if you're watching. That way you know to come back. How about that?
Okay.
I'll probably forget to do that, so see you later. So Starfield, it was a very mediocre game. I shouldn't say that. I had complaints about it. But it was never like, man, this is awful. I just don't want to play it. It was fun. I enjoyed it, but I just don't understand why they did what they did. Why they chose the path they did, Bethesda being who I'm talking about. And I just don't get it. It seems like they just took the cheapest route possible. Cheap being, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to have any space flight. Let's just make it in space, and let's have this thing that we call a space game. But expensive being, yeah, it looks great. The people are ugly, but the game looks great. It's like when I go to a planet, I go, holy crap, this looks like a planet. If I'm on a barren planet, it looks like a barren planet. It sounds like a barren planet. It looks amazing, but I think that's the problem. It all looks amazing. The game itself was not there. It's like somebody just walked out and went, hey, see you guys later. Okay, we're going to let the CG department take over. Game design's moving on to something else. See you later.
Wow.
And I don't get it. But the biggest thing, and I know in a microcosmic sphere of social gathering, being one person that I know, we were always talking about it at work because they bought it as well. And we both, which isn't a problem for me, I do this anyways, but we both said we're not looking anything up. We're not going on Reddit. We're not going on YouTube. We're just going to play the game, and the two of us together are going to be the information. Remember those days where you'd come in and go, hey, dude, I just did this in the game. What? I haven't done that yet. How'd you do that? Or I was trying to do this, and I don't get it. Do you understand it? Yeah, I think it's done this way. And so we fed off of each other playing the game and never looked anything up other than like a bug or something game-breaking. And that was fun. But there was one point where we were doing the story, and I was like, oh, man, I made it. Have you gotten like to this part where you're not exactly saying like, no, I haven't done that. Okay, play up to that part because I want to know what you think of it. And then they would come back and be like, oh, I did this. I'm like, what? What do you mean? And we reached a point where he came in, and this is where the mild spoiler comes in, and he said, I finished the game. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Because I hadn't made it to that part yet. And he's like, yeah, the game started over. They took away all of my stuff, all of my money, all my inventory, my ships, and they started the game over. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me go play really quick. Hang on. What the hell are you talking about?
That sounds like a bug.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, is that other than some dialogue choices, and you being basically the Starborn is what they call it, it's the same story over again. So you go into it, but instead of from the ground up, they skip the tutorial, thankfully, But instead of you going and saying, "Hi, Dweavis, what is this place? Is this space?" You come and you go, "Whoa, guys, I'm a Starborn. I know what you're doing with the artifacts, and this is what they are." And that basically initiates a spot where you get a dialogue option that says, "Hey, let's go do this," or "No, I think I'm going to join you, Dweavis, and we're going to go travel the galaxy." And in parentheses it says, "Play the main story again, skip the main story." And then you skip the main story, and it basically says, "Okay, just go do this stuff again." And from what, because at that point we kind of loosened up, and he said, "Yeah, I went and read about it, and basically, yeah, you just keep doing New Game Plus over and over and over, and nothing changes really." And I'm like, because at that point in the story, I'm like, okay, things are ramping up, things are getting good. All right, I'm getting into this now. And then you beat the guys, and I'm like, okay, now you get to be a Starboard. I'm like, cool. Now what? And then the credits roll. And I'm like, what are you talking about? The story was just happening. What? And it just left me with this kind of, where's the second act? What happened? That was the story? It's done? It's over? And their way of, I think I had like 60, maybe 80 hours in the game, which is nothing compared to a Skyrim or something. And I'm like, where's the rest of the game? That was my first thought. What happened? This is it? And that was it. They took away all my stuff, and all of a sudden, my interest in the game went... I was like, I don't want to play the story again, because they had 3 main planets you went to, and that was it. I was like, where are the rest of the planets? What do I do? I didn't go anywhere. I didn't see anything. You didn't take me anywhere. You said, go to this planet. Okay, now go back to the main planet. Okay, now from that planet, go back to this planet. Okay, now go back to the main planet. And you kept going back to your hub. And so in total, there were three basic planets you went through. One of them barely even. I forget the name of it. That's how bad it was. It was like a Western planet for the story. And then you went to Neon, which is the second biggest, and New Atlantis. And that was it. That was it. I'm like, where's the rest of the game? And it was the most bizarre thing to me that it just stopped. And it just ended. And I have no other further proof of this, because one news article, a source and fact does not make. But I saw one article when I was going through some of the bits stuff to talk about, and they showed stats of Starfield, and it's like they've lost 90% of their player base since it's been released, where it launched to like 400,000 people, and now it has less players than Skyrim at this point on Steam.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they made a huge mistake. And it seems like, I think I might have talked about this in the last bits, they're kind of backpedaling some of the stuff, because when the game came out, they're like, we refuse to give you vehicles. There will be no other mode of transportation in this game. And now they're like, oh, new modes are coming, new things, new fun, exciting modes of transportation are coming, guys.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I think this is turning into a big flop for them. Big flop. And I don't understand what happened.
Well, yeah, because like Bethesda's model has been a long time going now, like the DLC. And if people aren't interested in playing the game anymore, they're not going to sell a lot of that.
Right. Well, because I think the core thing that Fallout, Skyrim, Oblivion, that gave you is that the world just felt massive. And that's the reason I've never finished something like Skyrim, because I'd be doing the story and then 15 other things would come up. And then I'd be doing this and that and leveling this and wow, what's on top of that mountain? In Starfield, a large universe, a big game does not make, I guess. Because at some point it just became load from here to there. Talk to the guy about the story. Load from here, load from there, load from there, load from there. Okay, now up in the next part of the story. Okay, now I'm done with that. Load back to this planet. Load here, load there, load there. And it became, I don't need to stop on any planet. Why would I ever do that? What's the point? There's no point to going to any planet because I'm just loading between worlds to get to the next story point.
Yeah.
There was never any interest in me building a base. I didn't understand why you do that. And then I think the thing that really just killed the game is ripping it out from under you and taking everything from you. Everything. Because at that point I'm like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah,
I spent so much time getting these resources and everything.
Isn't that something like that? Like you would expect from Metroid, like within the first 20 minutes of that game to do to
Yeah,
you?
exactly.
To take everything away from you so you to get it back. Not
Right.
after you got to the end of the game and then, okay, you got to do it all again.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
granted,
man.
great. You get your experience, so you have your perks that you spent. Great. Okay, well, that's fun. I spent
But
all that time building my ship.
but
It's
it's not
gone.
but it's not even considered a new game plus, right?
I think it is, because I think people are like, I'm on New Game Plus 18. So I think it
Ugh,
does number it or something. But
weird.
I don't know. My interest in the game just overnight went away.
Huh.
It's hard to explain
Well,
where
I mean,
the feeling.
you could go back to a previous save, right? And boot
I
it up
think so.
before that happened.
It depends on if they've overwritten it. I think there's like, what, 10 saves before it starts knocking the bottom one out.
Okay.
I think it's one of those systems. But yeah, well, that was the other option. When you go into this portal thing, the person in there's like, you can choose to become a Starborn or you can choose not to become a Starborn. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to choose not to become a Starborn because I already knew, because the guy spoiled it. I
Uh-huh.
already knew. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I said, no, thanks. And so it put me back in the world. And it basically, the mission was, whenever you decide to become a Starborn, go talk to the person.
So it's just
It just kicked you back to do whatever you want.
it's like game lingo or code for restarting the game. Starborn.
Pretty much, yeah. And they give you a fancy ship, and that's about it. But I'm like, even if, like you said, I went back and chose not to be a Starborn, there's nothing I want to do in the game.
I go back to think about, I think it was Fallout 3 where Bethesda got knocked pretty hard that they didn't have a, like, once you finish the game was actually over initially when they released it, and then they had to go back in and they had to patch in your ability to continue playing the game after you finished it. And I was like, it's like, well, what lesson was learned there? Oh, that once you finish the game, people like to continue onward, right? This is like the reverse of that. This is like, oh, you finished the game, you get to continue onward, but you need to go all the way back to the beginning with nothing to continue onward.
Right.
It's like, I don't, yeah, I can't wrap my head around the thinking there.
Well, it makes me wonder too, if you're going through the second playthrough and you beat it again, does it take everything from you again? So you just keep starting over and over and over and over? I don't even know that I want to find out.
Let me give you an example of what the cycle you're talking about and what the actual reward was for going through that cycle. So Call of Duty Black Ops 1, the multiplayer mode. They have a thing in that called prestige. Like you get there's 15 levels of prestige. So each time you reach a level of prestige, you unlock a new thing, right? And once you reach 15, you're like, it's like, oh, okay, well, what now? It's like they give you the option. You can either stay here with everything unlocked, or you can basically trade in all your stuff for the ability to make one gun golden.
Oh God, not golden guns.
And then you could restart at the beginning again. Now here's the thing, and I kind of appreciated him for doing this for people that wanted to sink their time into this. So, yeah, you got to make one gun golden, but each time you reach level 15 prestige again, you got that option again. They didn't take away your previous golden gun.
Right.
They let you keep it, and then you get to make another gun golden. So eventually you can make your entire arsenal gold if you wanted to. And what that did was it gave people in the game a visible identifier for how much they've played the game. Like if you saw somebody with not just one, but they had 3 or 4 golden guns, you're like, okay, this person sunk some time into this. Right. And I was like, you could argue all you want about whether or not that's worthwhile or not, whatever. But it was a mechanic created to give people incentive to keep wanting to go through that same cycle over and over and over again. It sounds like with Starfield, they did something similar, but they're not really giving you incentive to want to restart that cycle again and again. They're missing the carrot on the stick.
Basically, yeah. Because there was no like, oh, cool, I'm going to do it better this time, or I'm going to do it this way, or wow, they're letting me do this now. There was none of that. It was just like I felt dead inside.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't want to do these things again.
Yeah. So, uh, maybe at the tail end of the whole project, maybe they just ran out of time, and they're like, okay, we have to have something here that happens at the end of the game. It's like, okay, well, let's restart everybody.
Well, and let's not forget this was heavily delayed too by what, like
Yeah.
a year or something. So something must have gone wrong. Because I stripped this down to somebody said, let's take Fallout 4 and make it in space. Somebody didn't say, I want to make a space exploration game where you get to fly around to different planets and do cool things. I don't think that's what happened because there's no space in this game. It's basically just here's a Fallout 4 character with a gun. Let's put him on a planet. Ooh, it's got low gravity. Wow. It's disappointing. I don't think I'm going to look at Starfield again until some kind of an expansion comes out and see what they're trying to do.
Makes sense.
This is probably a game maybe 10 years down the road. See how it's completed, and maybe it's worth picking up at a discount.
Yeah, I could see that.
So I'm still going to pick up Elder Scrolls day one because that's Elder Scrolls. This was a brand new IP, so I guess I can't fault them too much. Hopefully they learn from this, and before I'm dead, they make a Starfield 2 that's actually good. I still believe in them for things like Elder Scrolls, I think.
If they hurt Elder Scrolls, I think their fan base is going to have a riot.
I think so, yeah. I couldn't believe that. Like I said, this is not fully... I have no full claim to this information, but if there's still more Skyrim and Fallout 4 players than Starfield already, that says a lot of the longevity of a game. Because I've gone back to Skyrim within the past year or two, going, man, I got that itch to play Skyrim again.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I don't have that because I think one of the bigger problems is that this progression was so ungodly slow that the person I was talking to at work, we kept joking about it. It's like, hey man, I want to do this. Oh, that's locked behind perk points.
Oh God.
You want to use even the jetpack. I got a jetpack, it said booster. And I was like, why is this not working? Oh, I got to spend a perk point to use that ability. And everything in the game was a perk point. Hey, you want to do that thing? Build a base over there? Ooh, you don't have the extreme biohazard perk point. That's like 10 perk points down. And the perk points were so just like, please, sir, can I have another? Please. Where we got scared. It's like, well, I don't want to try and get to base building because that's going to take me 10 perk points. The one perk point I'm getting, I need to go over here with.
Uh-huh.
And it got to be where like, oh God, I'm scared to spend any of my points. And then I had like 7 points. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go over here and do this. And I'm sorry if people are like, well, just do the second playthrough, get more perk points, keep going. I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there you go. That is the end cap to my Starfield experience.
Man.
And it's a risk. I knew it going in. I wanted to try it because I love space stuff. It's Bethesda, and I guess they let me down. But I knew that going into it. It was a dice roll.
That's unfortunate.
So there you go. That's my Starfield ending. Let's hear about your fancy pants stuff now.
My fancy pants stuff.
Fancy pants? Let's do it.
So yeah, long time coming here.
Like 5 years, right?
No, it's actually been about. I actually
20 years?
I did the math. It was almost 2 years and 6 months exactly. I placed the order for it back in June of 2021.
Reference Bits episode 90.
Right.
Or whatever.
I got my Polymega system over Christmas.
You're not even gonna hold it up?
No. I have it plugged in right now.
How do we know you have it?
You can go to my channel. Go to my channel and you can see my video. That's AI?
That's AI. It's not real.
AI? Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I got the Polymega. Quick brief history lesson on what the Polymega is for everybody out there, because I got a strong feeling a lot of people don't know what it is. It's a retro console. It's got a couple of features on it that makes it stand out from the crowd. The first one is that it's a modular console, and by that I mean it has interchangeable parts on it that allow you to play games from other systems. And by other systems, it's more or less just considered as a retro console. It plays things like out the box. It will play a PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Sega CD, Neo Geo CD, and TurboGrafx 16 CD. So the base unit comes with a CD drive, if you haven't been able to guess by now. So anything that was on CDs and was a console, that base unit will play it. That's including imports, all regions, PAL, Japan, what have you.
Does it not go to Dreamcast?
Dreamcast, I don't think we're on traditional CDs. It has to have been a traditional CD for this to be functional on the base unit.
So maybe like a GameCube, because those are just mini discs.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Right now they don't have anything for that. The other modular console, the other mods that they have, are for cartridge based stuff. So they have the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, and I think the most recent one they released is Nintendo 64.
Woo!
They also have, it's not cartridge based, it's more card based. They have one for the TurboGrafx 16. So if anybody not familiar with the media for those, they were like little cards, like little credit cards is what they look like. So yeah, and in each of those, the base unit runs you about $500. That's how much it costs. It comes with the base unit and the controller. That's basically your price of investment fee.
Wow.
Because the modular system that you buy separate from that, I think they're between $70 to $80 each, and those come with the actual console piece that has the, like for the Nintendo 64, it has the cartridge part on the top to put the cartridge in, because these use actual media that the consoles use. So that's one of the key features on it.
So wait, if you want NES, SNES, 64, that's about $300 extra.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, an $800 console.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it does a few things here. Beyond just playing the games, it allows you to upload them and store them digitally while also retaining your physical copy. As I mentioned earlier, this is the best of both worlds.
Right. It's like MP3s on an MP3 player.
Yeah.
You can still buy the CDs.
And I'm not going to make this console out to be something completely outrageous and like, oh my God, that's never been done before. Emulation's been around forever.
Right.
Like that's nothing new. What this thing does is it kind of wraps up a lot of the emulation that you know and love out there on the PC world, and it kind of streamlines the whole process for you. You don't have to think about it. You get this thing, you put your game in, and it puts it on the console, and you have it. Like you don't have to worry about going and searching forums and stuff like that, finding your whatever you want to emulate. It handles all that for you rather well. But also it also handles a lot of the formatting problems. Like I said, if you wanted a game released in Europe, it handles the PAL issue, which if you're not an importer person, you probably aren't aware of the issues with PAL games. That they can be kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. But one of the other things it does really well is it's how it handles patches. So essentially, and you're wondering, like, wait a minute, a PlayStation 1 game, a patch? Why would I need a patch for that? That's because there was a large number of games, and I'm not going to say just PlayStation 1. There's other consoles also and other platforms that have games that were only released in Japan. And a lot of them are like not in English. Now, I'll tell you from being somebody that was a huge person involved in the import scene back in the day, there were actually a large number of games out of Japan that were Japan only that actually had a lot of English. Surprisingly enough, but there were some games, two specifically for me, that I'll talk about here in a second, that were unless you were fluent in Japan, you couldn't get anywhere in them. This was also very true for like RPGs and whatnot that were released exclusively in Japan. Sometimes you might get lucky and they got a European release, and so they were translated in English, but that was rare. But two games for me that I've had sitting on my shelf that I've basically have been unplayable. Like I tried my best to play them back in the day, but they were unplayable to me. The first one is a coveted title from the PlayStation 1 era that everybody hails as one of the best games on the system that, unless you're in Japan, you never really got to play or even understand, was a game called Tobal Number 2. They released the first one, Tobal Number 1, was released in America, and it apparently didn't do very well. The second one, it's a Squaresoft game, so that should put a lot of the fanboys out there on high alert there. It's like, right. Oh, Squaresoft, oh my god, and it's not Final Fantasy. What?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a fighting game. It was a 3D fighting game at the time, and it had a lot of novel concepts to it. But the thing that stood out for it, and the reason why it was, you're like what would make a fighting game so hard to play if it's not localized into English? Well, because this one's big standout feature was that it had a quest mode. Basically, being Square, they put an RPG element in the fighting game, and it was actually a completely separate game. They basically took the characters and the fighting mechanics of the fighting game and they put it into an RPG, and it was kind of one of those what are they called? I don't want to call it that. The roguelike thing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it was exactly like that, but you basically had a hometown that you go around, talk to people, villagers and stuff. You can get potions and stuff. You get experience points like an RPG, and you go out into these dungeons and you fight guys, and you get abilities and whatnot. But the novel concept here was whatever creatures or enemies you fought in the RPG became unlocked in the fighting game as a character you could pick from the roster of fighters in the fighting game. And once again, never been able to experience this game in English before, but there was a fan translation of it that was readily available for the PC. But all I had to do was find that translation and put it on my console. It's a little bit more complicated than that, the process of me doing that, but ultimately I got it to work, and I now have a fully English version of that game I can play that I've never had in the past like 20 some odd years. And granted, I may have been able to figure that out on the PC, but for anybody like me that isn't like PC fluent with a lot of this stuff, this is a console tailor-made for you, because it helps you, helps figure a lot of the stuff out for you. Now, on the downside, the console comes with a lot of things that you kind of have to research to figure out. Like, I didn't know how to put a patch on the console. There's no instructions for it at all. I was like, okay. I was like, for $500, you guys could have given me a book that gave me a rundown on how to patch something.
Right.
Like, that's a feature you have on the system. Like, why don't you tell me how to do this? So what you have to do is you have to get a separate, like, I got a thumb drive. And you had to put a folder on there, and you had to name it specifically patch. And you had to do it all in lowercase. You have to do it that way, otherwise the console won't read it. But once you have that, any file that's a .ppf, you drop that in there, and the console reads it, and then you can just attach it to the game. It's pretty simple once you know that. But I had to do a lot of research to figure that out. There was a lot of YouTube videos I came across that said, how do you patch on Polymega? And every single video showed you how to select the patch from the menu and patch the game. None of them showed you how to actually get the patch on the console.
It was like a video you should make.
It was so frustrating. I was like, yes, how did you get the patch on there?
When are you making your video for this?
I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe. You got to help your other people out.
Yeah, we'll see. so I got that working with a couple of my other games, and that has been a godsend. I actually played quite a bit of the toe ball game because I was like, oh my god, I know what to do now. I know what to do. This is amazing. um, but yeah, and I guess that could lead into the other part. If we're talking negatives about the system, and there are negatives to be aware of. The internal storage on that thing is pathetic. Like I was able to upload maybe about 10 to 12 games on there, and before the storage ran out. But thankfully, I guess, they were aware that people would want more storage than what they gave you. So I mean, you could use anything from a solid state drive to a USB stick and attach it to it, and you can use that as your storage. It's pretty simple. It's like whatever. It's extra money you got to spend, but but so far it hasn't been too terrible. There have been issues with. I've used two different thumb drives just to test things out. One of the thumb drives I have that I have certain games on now, um, it is not very stable, and I don't know if it's the thumb drive or if it's the system. Where sometimes games will just reset on me. It doesn't make any sense. But the other thumb drive I have works perfectly. So I'm still trying to figure out there. Some of the stuff I read seemed to indicate that it might be the formatting, because one of them is I think it's like FAT something, FAT.
FAT32.
Yeah, and the other one is the NTFS, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
The NTFS is the one that works well, and the FAT one is the one that's messing up on me. And some of the stuff I read in forums say that the FAT has problems with the system, so that might be the issue I'm running into.
Makes sense. Yeah, that was my first guess, actually. Woohoo!
So yeah, beyond that, like the controller you get with the base unit, it's kind of like a mixture of an Xbox PlayStation controller. Like the button layouts and everything, and the controller layout reminds me a lot of PlayStation. Like I'd say PlayStation, maybe PlayStation 2, 3 era controller. But the button assignments, it has the Xbox button assignments instead of like the X, circle, square, triangle. They have the XBA.
I bet you can't do that, because isn't that a Sony trademark?
Maybe
using those buttons.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
AB, that's just letters, so nobody can trademark that.
Yeah, it does offer the ability to use other controllers on there, but so far I've been unsuccessful. I tried plugging in my PlayStation 4 controller, and it locked the system up. And I was like, okay, so apparently that can't work. It seems to be an issue with just this particular with the base unit, because all the other modular systems, like the N64, for instance, it has native controller inputs that you would use with the N64. So basically, you could take your N64 controller out of mothballs, plug it into it, and it works.
I think the difference you're talking about here is that's an analog connection.
Yep.
It's the 64 connection, whereas the other one's USB, and that comes with all sorts of problems.
Exactly. Which all these systems didn't use USB connectors back then.
Correct.
So,
yep.
So yeah, this seems to be like a what's the lesser evil here? Do we give everybody access to all these CD drive games on this one modular piece and just have them use generic controllers for it? Or do we give them each their own modular thing where they get their own unique controller input for it?
It would have been nice if they had a controller input thing on the bottom. So it's like that was independent of the thing.
Yeah.
Or something. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
Can you use your PS1 controller? You can't, right? Because you have to use a USB or theirs. Oh, man.
Yeah. That's why I was trying to use the PS4 controller, because, silver lining for the Sony never changing their controller design.
I was going to say, why wouldn't any of them work? They're all the same.
So I once again, I have to look into it a bit more to find out what the issue is. But I mean, they're constantly doing updates to the firmware on the console. So maybe there'll be a fix for that sometime down the road. I don't know. As far as other things off the top of my head, there's been some issues with controller layout. For instance, it took me a while to figure out why they did this, but I finally figured out why they did this, and it actually does make sense. The analog controllers are not automatically turned on for games. And there is no option to just set it, turn on analog for all games. The reason for that being, and I totally forgot about this, is that the original PlayStation 1 system had an on-off button for the analog controller. And that's because not every game used analog.
Well, PS1 originally was just D-pad, right?
Exactly. Okay. They released the analog controller like a year or two later or something like that to compete with the N64 when that came out. And the reason for that being is if you played a game that didn't have analog controls, but the analog was turned on, you couldn't use the controller. It just wouldn't read the controller. And I totally forgot about that. So certain games on here, I was like, I couldn't remember. I was like, did it use analog or not? And I would turn on the analog option because you have to go to a separate menu on the overlay of the system to turn that on. I was like, wait a minute, now I can't do anything. And it took me a while to figure out why that was. And then I start to realize, like, okay, any game like 1997 and above probably uses analog. Anything 96 definitely didn't. But there's been some issues with that. There's one racing game I have called Rallycross, which is not a very good game without the analog stick. So I turned on the analog stick, and for some reason, the steering is on the right stick, not the left stick. So for a lefty like you, that would be perfect. But for me, like, it reversed it. And I'm like, okay, I can't play this game now. And that seems to be unique to only that game. I haven't had that issue with any other games. So there's a lot of wonkiness still with some of this stuff. It's not all going to work perfect. But like I would say the majority, like 99% of the games I play on the thing work just fine. The emulation is perfect. I was wondering, like, wait a minute, do I even have to download the game on it? Does it play it natively off of the disc, right? And it doesn't actually, because even if you decide not to install the game onto the hard drive, it's actually installing it in the background. And it auto installs it, because there was one game where I wasn't sure if I wanted to install it or not, and I let it sit there for a little while. And then when I finally decided to install it, I hit install, and it's like, boop, done. And I was like, what? I'm like, that's weird. And it's like, because it auto installs it in the background, so that way it can play it. And I'm like, okay. Trying to think if there was any other negative points about it. It's got a lot more on the positive things, I guess. It's got things on there like, you remember Game Shark?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It has Game Shark support. So every single game on there, if you have a Game Shark code, it accepts them.
Oh wow.
So that was kind of neat. And then it has they call it enhancements. You know, it's stuff you've seen. We've seen it on like the mini consoles, right? Like for instance, those emulators. Where you can change the aspect ratios and the resolution and all that sort of stuff, which is nice. It does things like you can automatically save the game. It's not nearly as neat as stuff like you'd see on the NES, the Super Nintendo Mini. It doesn't have anything quite that fancy, but it's serviceable and it works. I think that about runs the gamut. Do you have any questions based off of any of that stuff?
I don't think so. Definitely not more my cup of tea. I'm more of the cartridges, and I know we talked about the analog pocket being something I was interested in, but I don't know. It sounds okay. It seems a bit steep in the price range, though.
Yeah.
That's way up there for a lot of the bugs and problems you're talking about.
Yes.
I would expect that on like a $200 console, maybe. So
yeah. This is like something you get. I actually think you would still really enjoy this thing, like even with the price point. More specifically for like access to the old Nintendo stuff.
Well, I guess that was my next question then, is you can't just buy a Polymega and then choose which ones you want. It has to come with the disc one first.
Yes.
Oh, God. So you can't be like, I just want the 64 Super Nintendo.
No. Yeah, that's why it seems like it's kind of like you're buying into an investment. Like you're like, okay, I need this core thing, and then I can get the things I really want.
But I guess the weird thing is if you put in the 64, I would assume you take the CD thing out. Or does the CD thing always stay there and the 64 thing goes somewhere else?
You take the CD thing out, but you could still run the games off of internal storage.
So why wouldn't they a la carte that? Why would they force you into the PlayStation type era first and say, would you rather have the cartridge era?
I think they're going off of the most bang for your buck, because the base unit, you have access to more systems than you do with any other of the mods.
Interesting. Because the Analog Pocket kind of did the same thing, but I feel like it did it because of a limitation. Like, all the Game Boy games are the same, so that slot, it's fixed into the system. And then I would imagine you get something that's like a Game Boy slot, and then it adapts the Game Gear game in. Because you can't remove that piece, so I don't know. If you can already remove the piece, I would think, here's the console for $300. What would you like? I'll take the 64, Super Nintendo, maybe not the NES.
I would say that would probably be something that they might explore when they figure out their how should I put it, supply problems.
Yeah, well, because I can tell you right now, I'm not paying $500 for PlayStation games that I don't have any of just to get the 64 game for an extra $100.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It's no, you have to completely be into multiple systems to get this thing. If you're getting it just for one system, it's not worth it.
Right.
Not at all.
Well, even then, it's like, if I want Super Nintendo, there's another $100 gone.
Yeah.
So I'm up to $700 now, plus taxes. So we're at like $800, $850.
Which is why I think, for my opinion anyways, it was smart for them to not force you to get all that stuff up front. You can get it whenever you want to. So, like, I'm probably going to get the N64 one probably later this year, but I have no reason to do that right now, because I've got like 80 plus games I haven't played in like 20 years on my system right now.
Right. So I guess you have to be invested in the Sega PlayStation discs first.
I'm going to say, here's the really funny thing. The thing that I think most people skate over, that this thing is probably the most worth for getting, is the Sega Saturn emulation.
Maybe, yeah.
Because that system is coveted. Like, it's just below the Dreamcast for a lot of people, because of how crappy that system was handled here in North America. Most people never experienced anything on that system, which is why you get stuff like Panzer Dragoon Saga that goes for like $2,000 on eBay for the American version, because they never made enough of it, and that game's amazing, and nobody got to play it. But also, more importantly, though, the import scene for the Sega Saturn was amazing. There were so many great games for that system over there in Japan that never got released over here. So I think there's a lot of appeal on that end of it also. But also, like just some of the archaic games that are just impossible to find. You know, there's Police Knots, and there was one other one, Snatcher, for the Sega CD. Like, those games go for hundreds of dollars, if not thousands as well. And like, you can get those. I think it was Police Knots never got a English translation, but once again, you can get the English. You can get the Japan. Like, the funny thing is, that game goes rather cheap on eBay because it's all in Japanese. But as soon as you apply an English translation to it with this thing, suddenly the game's worth something.
I think it's just an American thing, because if you go, for example, to buy, let's say, Pokemon Yellow, it's like $80. But if you buy the Japanese version, it's like $10.
Exactly.
I think it's just our stupid culture.
Yeah, it's our stupid culture, but also a lot of these games, like, how should I put it? They were just much more mass produced in Japan than they were here. Is what it. So there's an oversaturation of that market for a lot of those games. So, but anyways, but I guess what I'm saying, I get your point. Like, this is clearly targeted to a specific demographic of gamer,
Right.
and that demographic, in my opinion, is somebody that wants a little bit from everything. And I was more than willing, like, it's like, okay, I'm going to make this investment for this first thing. But am I going to get the NES one, the Super Nintendo one, the Genesis one, the TurboGrafx 16 one? I probably will at some point. And that's because I have memories with all those consoles.
I wonder what the longevity is here. Hopefully, if they go belly up and you already own the pieces, everything keeps working. Because you're $1,000 into the console at that point.
Yeah, you would hope.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But here's the thing, and once again, it's never good to put your hope and wishes into this. But like this already has a robust community of people. If the people that made this console suddenly decided to stop supporting it, I think you would have a large community of people out there that would keep this thing alive.
Yeah, I guess the first question is, does it connect to the internet? And the second
Yes.
question is, do you have to sign in to anything to use it?
No signing into
So
anything.
no accounts. So if the internet's gone, you can still play everything?
Yeah.
And do you have to connect to the internet to upload the discs or do anything?
No.
So yeah, I think there'd probably be hope at that point.
Yeah, it's pretty standalone. It's pretty standalone. The only reason you would want to connect to the internet is it pulls from a database for information on your game. So, like, for instance, when you put a disc in there, it reads the disc and it pulls the information from a database, and then you apply it to that game when you install it. That's the only reason you would use the internet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's working out for you so far, which is good.
Yeah. I'm very eager to get to more of the modulars portions of the thing, because I really want to try a cartridge based thing on there. And I have a lot of Nintendo 64 games sitting out there in the container that I really want to dig into. So yeah. There's something very like satisfying also, like when I put in a game, what was one of the ones? I think it was like Breath of Fire 3 or something like that for PlayStation 1. Game goes for like $300-400 on eBay, and I was like, I get to just play it without paying that much for it.
Yeah, I guess if you have everything already, you're golden.
Yeah,
if you don't, you're still screwed.
There's just something sad, because I had a number of games from my old collection that go for a ton of money now, right? Like, I didn't have I don't have the cases for them and things like that would make them cost that much. But like, there's something satisfying about being able to play all these games that other people out there are charging thousands of dollars for. So
yeah, that's definitely true.
I'm like, okay, cool, I like it. And I think at some point, like, depending on where you go and how long this thing goes on, like, I could certainly see a community of people out there where they're just swapping games with each other. It's like, here, take this game, install it, and then give it back.
i.e. piracy.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just downloading a ROM at that point.
Yeah, but you have it. And it's the actual thing that you bought. So, I don't
know. Yeah. Somebody had that ROM at some point.
So, yeah.
I use ROMs. I'm not saying you shouldn't.
It was paid with hard-earned money at some point.
Yeah.
But also, it's no different than selling it to GameStop.
No. Although I saw some funny article where apparently there's a clause in Sony or something that says you're not legally allowed to sell your games or like loan them or sell them or anything.
Wow. GameStop should have been taken out of business a long time ago.
I know. It's probably just some legal mumbo jumbo, but it's like, that's funny. Remember the MPAA? You will not show this content to anyone ever. This movie is yours and yours alone.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, get out of here. Stupid people.
Yep.
Greedy.
Yep.
Hence we get back into our culture of greedy, and it's terrible.
Exactly. So, yeah, I have a video up on my channel right now of my going over a few things. a few things with the system. I probably said more now than I actually did in the video. But what I did in the video was I actually had two cameras. You know, I had the one for the console or traditional game capture, but also had my phone so you could see in real time what was happening with the console while it was happening up there, so you can get a correlation and an idea of how everything works. So go check that out if you want to get a better idea of it. Otherwise, I'm planning on doing a live stream at some point here once I start feeling a bit better from my sickness to go on there and just play around with it and whatnot. So yeah,
there you go. That seems like the perfect outro already.
Yeah, expect a lot of retro gaming from me.
There you go.
There's a lot of classic games coming your way from me.
Sounds good to me. Retro gaming is always great.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Where can they find your channel then?
Gaming with Dweavis. Go check that out. It should be, if you're watching this, maybe not. It'll be in the description below. You can find a link there. But yeah.
All right. Well, I'll save some stuff for next time since we're already heavy into this episode. And we'll kind of go over some more stuff. Hopefully there'll be some news coming out next time. I don't know. We're starting a new year, so they got to start having news at some point.
Hopefully there'll be some Starfield DLC.
Yeah, right. Let us fly the ship around. How about that DLC?
That's crazy.
How about we actually fly through space? Which, hint, hint, there was a game on sale called Everspace 2 where I can fly around in space, and so far I'm having fun. Maybe I'll talk about that next time.
All right. Last question for outro.
Uh-oh.
Starfield or No Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky.
Damn. Wow.
I hesitate to say that because they've had like 20 years to fix their game and worth of content. If we're talking launches.
but Starfield has had 20 years of seeing all the problems they had with their game and tried to avoid that. Instead, they created all new problems.
I don't know. I feel like there's just being able to fly around in No Man's Sky, and you actually get to collect materials. Like, you see the ground deforming, you see stuff flying towards you, the tree gives you lots of materials. In Starfield, it's like you find an iron rock, you go, and then it comes out with one iron ore.
Maybe if they found some way to merge those two things together.
Yeah?
Maybe.
Yeah, they should have talked to the No Man's Sky people. Hey, how'd you manage flying around in space? We don't get it. Space is big and stuff.
And then the No Man's Sky guys are like, wait, you actually create your content? Yeah. We just have it create itself.
I just pushed a button. I don't really know how the game works. I don't know. I guess look at the thing. I don't know.
A black hole?
We don't actually have ships. They just fly in and out, and people watch them for what they want. I don't know what the ships are. I couldn't tell you.
The Starfield guys are like, space? You guys have space?
You can fly in space? But the moon's like way over there, man. I don't get it. How do you get there?
I want this conversation to happen so badly.
Yep, I think as a game, No Man's Sky is better.
Okay.
Just because you feel like you're doing stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
You may not like the stuff you're doing, but you're doing it.
There may be no rhyme or reason to what you're doing in No Man's Sky, but by God, did I like it for what it was.
All right. With that, I guess we're out of here.
I guess so. All right. Well, thank you, anybody who joined us, either video or audio-wise. And I suppose we will see you on the next bits for hopefully more entertaining stuff we've been doing and things that are happening in the world. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.